Russia, despite being one of the world's largest and most influential countries, faces significant political, economic, and social challenges that have defined its recent history and will continue to shape its future. The country's economy, though rich in natural resources, is heavily dependent on oil and gas exports. These commodities have been a double-edged sword for Russia, creating significant wealth when global prices are high, but leaving the country vulnerable to market fluctuations. The Russian government, under President Vladimir Putin, has failed to sufficiently diversify the economy, leaving sectors like technology, manufacturing, and services underdeveloped in comparison to Western nations. Corruption remains a significant issue, with oligarchs controlling vast sectors of the economy. These elites, many of whom have close ties to Putin's government, have amassed immense fortunes, while the general population continues to suffer from low wages, poor living standards, and lack of economic opportunity. In rural areas, poverty is widespread, and even in major cities like Moscow and St. Petersburg, many people struggle with the rising cost of living and limited upward mobility. Politically, Russia operates under an authoritarian regime where power is concentrated in the hands of Putin and his inner circle. Political opposition is systematically silenced, with opposition figures like Alexei Navalny imprisoned, exiled, or even assassinated. Freedom of speech is heavily restricted, and state control of the media ensures that the government maintains a firm grip on public perception. Independent journalism is rare, and dissent is met with harsh punishments, including imprisonment or worse. Putin's control over the government, judiciary, and military has allowed him to remain in power for more than 2 decades, and he has amended the constitution to potentially stay in office until 2036. On the international stage, Russia's actions have alienated it from much of the world, particularly Western democracies. The annexation of Crimea in 2014 was a pivotal moment, resulting in sanctions from the United States, European Union, and other nations. These sanctions targeted key sectors of the Russian economy, including finance, energy, and defense, making it difficult for Russia to access international capital markets and cutting off essential technologies and services. This isolation has only deepened with Russia's invasion of Ukraine in February 2022. The roots of the conflict in Ukraine can be traced back to Russia's desire to prevent its former Soviet neighbors from aligning too closely with Western institutions like the European Union and NATO. Ukraine's push toward European integration and away from Moscow's influence has been seen by Putin as a direct threat to Russia's regional dominance. To Putin, a Ukraine integrated into the West represents the loss of a buffer zone between Russia and NATO, which he views as a hostile military alliance. Putin has long argued that NATO's eastward expansion after the collapse of the Soviet Union was a provocation, even though many Eastern European nations joined the alliance voluntarily to safeguard their independence from Moscow's influence. In Putin's eyes, NATO's presence near Russia's borders is an existential threat, one that he seeks to neutralize by reasserting control over Ukraine. The Russian government has framed the invasion as a defensive action meant to protect ethnic Russians and Russian speakers in Ukraine, although this narrative is widely seen as a pretext for a broader attempt to destabilize the country and install a pro-Russian government. The invasion, however, has been disastrous for Russia on many fronts. The international community responded with a new round of even harsher sanctions, further crippling the Russian economy. Major global companies have withdrawn from Russia, and the country's currency, the ruble, plummeted in value. Access to foreign technologies, goods, and services has been severely restricted, impacting everything from consumer electronics to vital components needed for Russia's energy and defense industries. Socially, the war has had a profound impact on the Russian population. Thousands of Russian soldiers have died in Ukraine, and many young men have been conscripted into a conflict they may not support. Protests against the war, although relatively small given the country's strict censorship laws, have taken place, and those who speak out against the war face severe consequences, including imprisonment. Despite government propaganda portraying the invasion as a necessary measure to protect Russia's interests, many ordinary Russians are disillusioned by the economic hardships and international isolation the war has brought. Russia's growing reliance on China as a trading partner and ally in the face of Western sanctions is also a double-edged sword. While China provides Russia with much-needed economic support, the imbalance in power dynamics means that Russia may find itself increasingly subordinate to Beijing's strategic interests. This shift challenges Russia's historical role as a dominant global player and raises questions about the long-term viability of its current foreign policy strategy. At the same time, Russia is dealing with a host of internal social issues. Alcoholism, drug abuse, and high rates of suicide, particularly among men, are rampant public health concerns. The healthcare system, despite being state-funded, struggles with underfunding, inefficiencies, and corruption, making it difficult for many Russians to access quality care. Additionally, LGBTQ+ rights are under attack, with legislation like the gay propaganda law effectively silencing discussions of LGBTQ+ issues and creating a hostile environment for sexual minorities. Russia also faces severe demographic challenges. The population is shrinking, as birth rates have fallen, and life expectancy, though improving in recent years, remains lower than in much of Europe. The government has attempted to address these demographic issues with policies aimed at encouraging larger families, but these efforts have had limited success, and the long-term outlook remains troubling. Culturally, Russia is a nation caught between its imperial past and its uncertain future. The government has promoted a form of nationalism that romanticizes Russia's Soviet and imperial history while positioning itself as the defender of traditional values against what it perceives as the moral decay of the West. This narrative is used to justify both domestic repression and foreign intervention, but it has created a more insular, isolated Russia that is increasingly disconnected from global norms and trends. In conclusion, Russia faces a wide range of political, economic, and social challenges that are exacerbated by its actions on the world stage. The invasion of Ukraine has brought these challenges to the forefront, isolating Russia internationally and placing enormous strain on its economy and society. While Russia remains a powerful country, its future is uncertain as it navigates the consequences of its aggressive foreign policy, internal repression, and economic struggles. Whether Russia can overcome these obstacles and emerge as a stable and prosperous nation remains to be seen, but the road ahead is fraught with difficulties.